Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Well, I tell you what, if you are currently own your own practice, or if you've considered owning your own medical practice, today is the show for you. I'm excited to share the microphone with an accomplished physician, medical business owner, and an educator. She's presented nationally on medical and medical business related topics and authored numerous articles and book chapters. She is a creator of the online business course, buildyourmedicalpractice.com. Everybody welcome Dr. Mila Mogilevsky. Mila, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Brett. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I always love those introductions. I even love the conversations even more, but how's that feel, to kind of like summarize your journey so far in a little entry like that?
It almost feels like you're talking about somebody else, but It is me, I guess, so my whole kind of point in this, if I can do it, anybody can.
Yeah, that's great. Some focus, some determination, some diligence, all of that. And I'm excited to talk about and present to the listeners out there on this build your own practice, build your own medical practice idea. And I know so many of us out there going from like W2 to entrepreneur, and there's so many hurdles like in our mind that we have to overcome. Yes. So you've put together this platform that allows this, to break it down into simple steps and then talk about those steps. And I hear this a lot, talking with a lot of physicians, is that's kind of like the hole that you miss in medical school is exactly what we're providing here, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they teach you everything but how to run a practice, or but how to become a successful business person, or how to think outside of the box. And the journey that it's now been, almost 15 years since I've been doing this, it was full of hurdles and full of obstacles. It was beautiful, but difficult. And so, a couple of years ago when COVID hit and I had a little bit of time in my hands, my friend and I kind of got together and said, if we were to educate somebody else how to do this, how would we go about this? How would we make it simple for people to sort of digest this enormous amount of information, how to kind of put it in small blocks and follow the steps, step by step to get where we got, and full disclosure, I'm sure there are multiple ways to do this. And some people probably a little bit faster at this than others. I am certainly not one of them. It took me a while to figure this out. And ultimately, I'm a much better person for it. So I think that looking at this course potentially would be very helpful to just kind of take some of it or all of it in and build off of this, and in the way, save a lot of time, energy, and frustrations that we had experienced ourselves.
So just kind of give a little bit of background for the listeners and why, they should take your advice. You're established, like you're the real deal. You're currently based out of New York City, right? In the midst of expensive real estate. And that's kind of like our first conversation was, how can I have a practice and produce money when I'm paying these kind of rents? But we're going to jump into that. So what if we just give a little bit of background on your medical journey, basically from med school into probably a W-2 position, right? And then into becoming an entrepreneur. So what would that look like if you summarize that?
So, mine was maybe a little bit different from others. I didn't go from being employed to doing W-2 necessarily, but when I, and you mentioned the New York City being so difficult and full of competition and all that. When I graduated from my fellowship as a pain management doctor, there weren't really any good jobs. I looked around and whatever I saw just was not very inspiring. And I felt that you would either end up in the hands of other practices that were running a, sometimes shady or difficult or kind of gray area, opioid-based practices, or you would end up in an academic setting, which was good, but wasn't exactly what I wanted. So I started out by working in the VA system, where I was doing a lot of teaching, residence teaching. This was a residency Mount Sinai program. It was very gratifying, the teaching aspect, but certainly not the business aspect of it. And so very shortly, almost within months after I started, I decided to seeing sort of patients on my own time, which was allowed. So I started working Saturdays, just doing procedures and seeing patients at this neurologist practice who needed some help with pain management. And within about a year and a half, I've added another day. And then very slowly, I rented someone's room, like this was a primary care doctor who happened to have an extra room for me to see people, and started seeing patients, added another day. And then at some point, just numbers didn't make sense anymore. I was making more money seeing my own patients than, working in an outside established institution. And at some point, you just have to make that jump. I said to myself, look, I have the skills, I have the desire, I have the knowledge. I have a very handful number of patients that are now following me. It's now or never. And I just made a plunge. And to your point, rent is very expensive in New York City, but you very quickly start understanding that rent is just a number, right? Mm-hmm. Everything else comes on top. So if you're paying, I don't know, $20,000 a month or $2,000 a month, really doesn't matter as long as you are continuing to add patients and more patients. So I always tell my people that are starting out, don't worry about constant variable. Like those are the numbers that don't change. What changes is what you put over, mm-hmm. right? So that always has been sort of my motto. I'd rather be in a comfortable place and pay slightly higher rent, but see and accommodate more patients than try to, squeeze out the last dime from like renting something a little bit less attractive or a little bit more, say, affordable, but then not being able to bring another extra patient in or attract a patient.
Very, very interesting. So even right out of the gate, just a couple of the hurdles that you overcome and questions I would want to throw at you on those first hurdles mm-hmm. is when you started seeing your own patients, you added that day. Did you automatically know to start an LLC and, like doing business as, or because there's got to be some liability stuff and tax stuff.
Yeah. So there are a few things that you have to do. And I don't want to go into this too much because it's actually all in my course. It's outlined exactly what you do step by step by step. But yeah.
Great question then, huh?
Right, exactly. So it's an awesome question. That's the first thing that people ask me. It's actually not as complicated as it sounds at all. You get an accountant, they'll tell you how to incorporate your business, how to make it official. And then, you have to get the malpractice insurance, which again, you always do, whether you work for the hospital, work for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then as far as all the other things, it's really not that complicated. Don't let that, and I would tell people who start out, please do not let that being your main hurdle. Your main hurdle really is your staff and being able to sort of work with people. And that's one thing that I would absolutely stress anybody who goes into this. Make sure you treat your staff right. Make sure you surround yourself with, great practice manager or somebody who does your front desk. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. Establish the philosophy that's important to you. And this way everybody speaks the same language. Mm-hmm. And that's how you roll with this.
Yeah. So, and I've been through this journey myself and understanding the people piece. And I had found that the more, I guess, that you grow your business, it's kind of like the less that you are actually involved in your business. It's more about the people as you grow and building 100%. And building that culture. It's the way that I have the same perspective, mission, and vision that the person next to me does and the person next to them, because it's a continuation of us. And it starts from the top, just like everything else. If I am the visionary 100%. And I set this path forward, it gives me goosebumps to think that I am like, we are the difference makers, right? Because we have this ability to set this path and set this mission. And it's our ability then to communicate it and create these like-minded relationships around us, because I want everybody to be treated just like I was there. And for me, it's on a job site or in a house or as a rental. And for you in your medical practice, it's that same way. One of the bigger, another hurdle before getting into the actual growth of the practice itself would be that mindset piece of taking the jump, like jumping from something that's so safe to something that's unknown. How did, like, what's that one? I remember for me, Mila, when I made that jump from a W-2, and I remember having the conversation with my wife the night before and be like, okay, this is it. We're going to do this. We're on, right. And then getting up the next morning and be like, okay, we're really going to do this. It's going to happen. And it was like, it takes so much mental power for something just to say like, okay, I'm doing this.
I agree, but I think that, and it's almost like you're telling me this, and I have my goosebumps because that's exactly what happened to me. I sat down with my husband and I said, for me, the day when I decided I was going to do this was when the hospital that I was working for got bought by yet another hospital, and they got rid of all of the employees and all the physicians that worked there for 20 years. They've built this amazing department, and overnight it was gone. Yeah. And so the main person of the department, the chairman, was leaving. I still remember it was June 14th. That was his last day. And I said, you know what, get me out of that contract. That's going to be my last day too. I will not be in the position 20 years from now where after I have built and helped, this practice to get built, that somebody can just tell me you no longer exist. Goodbye. Mm-hmm. So that was a push, emotional push for me. But really what I would tell people is that, we're all physicians. We all have amazing skills. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Really, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Okay, you'll find a job. You could always find a job. So not to make that plunge, I feel like that's actually not a safe way to go.
A bigger risk. Yeah.
Because you're safe. Who are you going to back in your life? Who would you back? You back yourself, right? Ask yourself a question: would other people back you? Absolutely. If you can vouch for yourself, other people will. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny, we're sharing that similar kind of story in the jump. And I'm sure so many listeners have that same either moment prior to or have experienced that moment as well, too. So Here we are now, Mila, where you've created this, and it's unique pain medicine. Correct. Right? That's your platform that you're growing and in your specialty. And you've got a couple of offices now, right?
Correct. So we have there is one office in Brooklyn, and then the second location is in Manhattan, and we are in the process of adding potentially a third one in Long Island of New York City. So for the time being, it's 2.5, but we're adding slowly but surely.
So, and I just wanted to touch on that too. And whenever I'm speaking with anybody about real estate, it's always the same way. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying this to show, like, this is what's worked for me and this is what's worked for you. So when we say this for the listeners now who are considering this, or even bumped against that conversation before about taking the leap, it's you've done this and you've established in one of the tougher spots, and now you've created this platform that is shared your experience. And I think you put it great where it's like, okay, this may not be the only way to do this, but this is what I've learned in my journey, and I want to share this with you. Right. And I'm looking at the website now. It's buildyourmedicalpractice.com, and it's buildyourmedicalpractice.com. And the fun acronym on this BUMP, right? Buildyourmedicalpractice.com. And I see these cards here: real estate, setting up software and infrastructure, staffing, scheduling and seeing patients, and turning a profit. And that's how you've kind of got this whole big kind of chaotic mind thing happening where you've simplified it and put it in these little barrels. Right. Can you tell us a little bit about how that breaks down for you and how it would be beneficial for your students to kind of picture it this way?
I mean, again, all of this was done retrospectively, right? After I've tried multiple things, So again, so make it very, very simple. Start somewhere, rent a room, rent a corner, rent a space where you can see patients. Get to the point where you see significant number of patients to add another day. So for me, for instance, for my specialty, and I'm being very, now I'm like kind of going into greedy, things of this, but for my specialty, seeing 5 patients per day was enough to add another day. For other people, say if you're primary care, it may take a little bit more patients per day because your revenue is a little bit less. But you have to sort of look at the specific critical number that will allow you to say, okay, now I can expand to next day. Now I can expand to next day. And after, for me, it was about after 3 days, after I felt that, for about 3 days per week, I was seeing at least 5 to 10 patients per day. For me, this was a no-brainer. Then this is when I said, okay, if I can sustain this, then I can easily afford a full-time, office with a reasonable rent. And again, a reasonable rent in New York is not a reasonable rent in Kentucky, but nevertheless, that number stays the same. Yep. While you continue growing. So of course, I wouldn't say, go out there, get $5 million, building and break yourself in half. Of course not. But also do not shortchange yourself in a position where, you can't see that extra patient, you can't accommodate that extra situation because you simply don't have the room. Be comfortable, just like you would be in your own home. And it is your home. For the next 20, 30 years, this is your home. Whatever you do at home, and in your real home at night is like 3-4 hours in the evening, right? So you have to be comfortable. You have to be, in a welcoming environment. That's what that would be my main suggestion. And then, as far as the biggest challenge, of course, is patients acquisition, as everybody knows, right? So that's the puzzle that everybody solves differently. But again, your number one rule in this is treat your patients like you would treat your family members. You'd be surprised how many people will refer or talk about you or, spread the news about you. And then everything else comes after, social media, getting, publishing yourself in different journals, magazines, whatever your situation is. All of this are great options, but start with basic things. Just accommodate your patients, call them the night after the procedure, ask them how they're feeling, encourage them to bring their friends. I've done a lot of pro bono cases at the beginning because I didn't know if this insurance was going to, compensate me. I didn't know if the patient will ever come back. If somebody comes in, and I still do this, if somebody comes in severe pain and I don't take their insurance or they can't afford me, well, then I'll do it anyway. Things like that carry huge potential. You're not doing this to get ahead financially. You're doing this because that's the right thing to do. And patients sense that.
Yep. And that goes across, just in any service or product. And there was a person named Zig Ziglar in the sales world. He said, start helping, stop selling. Stop selling, exactly. Start helping. And Mila, it also made me think of the Walt Disney perspective of be our guest. You're our guest. When you're our guest, just like you said, our family. And that does. And for me, from the outsider, I'm not a physician. And from the outside, hearing you say that, those are all things that hit bells for me. And I would love to work with you. I want to work with you, that's awesome. And I heard you say this approach, that you came in, we're not going to go out, raise 5 million and do all this stuff. What I hear you saying is starting small and, hitting a point where you can see 5 patients a day. That was a number you threw out there. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm hearing this in the business world of what we call sniper shots. So whenever I start a new business idea or start a new perspective or what I call a pivot, and I've got my main business, I've got a little pivot, I'm going to start with sniper shots. And I'm going to start with these little things that go out and see, because if I start small, I fail small. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
so
exactly
if I'm taking if I take these sniper shots and then I'm seeing value in these things and I can start measuring my key performance indicators in these little shots and it's performing, boom, let's add some juice to it. What's, in the marketing world, then I'm going to start, putting gas on the fire. So then we go from sniper shots to cannon shots, right? Boom, this is working. I'm going to add another day. Boom, here comes another shot. Here's my rent. Here's my unit, right? So it's very interesting.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's like a baby who knows how to walk. You've got to take those steps before you walk, but walk you will. Yeah. Nobody ends up not walking, right? And it's exactly the same thing in business, in medical business, and I'm sure any other business. If you want to walk, you will walk. It's just a matter of taking every step. and doing it correctly and having that forward vision.
And Mila, what we kind of talked about hurdles. What was, I guess, the biggest hurdle for you in this journey, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, so it's exactly to what I just referred to. The biggest hurdle in this in for us is patients acquisition,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Getting patients through the door, getting them excited. There's always just like any other business, hotel business, restaurant business. How do you get that patient through the door? At this point, of course, we have grown a lot. I've hired several physicians that each bring their own sort of character to the table, if you will, and they attract different populations. Some of them are younger, some of them are a little bit more, in touch with with older patients, and they join different clubs and etc. But patient acquisition is always key. Working with insurance companies is another hurdle that I think everybody is going through right now, and the insurance companies are getting more and more difficult to work with, especially after COVID. And it's just one of those challenges that everybody has to work with these days. So, I used to get very bogged down by the fact that, oh my God, so now what? This insurance is now no longer covering this procedure, or they're not longer doing this. But you evolve, you adopt, you figure out how to deal with this and how not to let yourself down, as a result of this. So, and kind of taking it as you mentioned before, like a snapshot. You look at things from the whole, kind of like from the bird's eye view. Yes, you lose some, you gain some, but move forward. Get past your downfalls. Just kind of like keep your eye on the ball. You're working on your own. You're not a slave of hospital administration, and that by itself is a huge win.
Huge win, yes, to get over that. And I heard you mention multiple things inside of there. With that being one of the biggest hurdles, that the multiple services and additional providers allowed you to diversify basically the patients that you are touching, not only helping, but touching. And I can see this, especially in the social media world, where I'm seeing, physicians on Instagram, YouTube, all of these different things, where that's a whole different target base versus patients and who you can help versus, somebody that's, older and not on those specific platforms. I think that's a great approach. And that brings up the idea, Mila, of the passive income piece. This is kind of where our worlds collide in the passive income.
Right.
I work with a lot of physicians where we are acquiring real estate for passive income. And the build your own medical practice passive income is building your practice as a business. And when you build your business right, you're creating the opportunity to not exchange time for money.
Precisely.
Right. And in building it out this way, like on buildyourownmedicalpractice.com, you're creating this opportunity. And whenever we're working with physicians and we're looking at deployable capital, every single scenario is if the physician has the opportunity to invest in themselves, in their own business, it's hands down, it's always going in their business, because you can build this opportunity in what's called multiples. So you build these things up. And in my mind, I'm seeing like little blocks or whatever. And then the chance that you do have to sell it, which comes across back to one of the points you made earlier, when that other hospital or company sold that, you lose the ability to maintain the culture and all of that. So there's a moral kind of question there. But when it comes down to investing and looking at the numbers, and you said this is the equation, right? Just like the rent was in the business equation. When we're looking at an investment equation, it's about building this up and your money performing for you. So in that regard, it's always to invest in yourself and invest in your business.
Absolutely.
So what a great platform put together and to really run this through. And how I love this question, being a serial entrepreneur. How long have you been doing this platform where you've been helping physicians grow their business?
So the specific course, we finished it in 2022, but I have been helping people much, much earlier than that. One of the main things that I do in my practice is that I train fellows. right, to do what I do. But I don't just train them, I mentor them, right? So lots of those people who like graduated and went and opened up their own practices did so because we had that conversation, so this is kind of like my passion, right? So I spend the weeks with them, I spend a month with them, I spend a year with them, depending on like what kind of, relationship we have as far as, whether they're employees or they're just, rotating students. So it's that teaching that I've done over the years, that really sort of help people, to embolden them or inspire them.
All right. So we're back on this, and you're mentioning, run your own race. And to me, that's, staying fixed on the goal. And in the real estate where I love comparing everything to the real estate where it's,
Sure.
Where I live, but I just want to make sure that the investment goal that you make, whether it's building your business or investing in assets, aligns with who you are and fits your goals and your values. Because then when you do build that culture, Mila, I'm sure then it's easy because it's you. It's not something you're creating. It's you, and you're basically cloning that. So where does this take you? Like, where do you see Mila in 5 years?
Well, Brett, I tell you, I started out working 6 days a week for many, many years. Then I worked 5 days a week. I'm now down to 4 days a week. I'm hoping to be in 5 years. I'm hoping to be that visiting person that maybe does like interesting cases once a week, just because I like it. So my ultimate goal is to run the show from the, from home, from the beach. I know it sounds a little, corny or talky, but this is really what it's all about. We talked about passive income. I now have wonderful doctors doing what I do and better, and sort of, I'm running this now from more and more from sort of sidelines, I see myself doing more of networking, meeting other interesting, parties, basically like outlining next direction for the practice, adding the other services rather than me physically being there, working with the patient, spending those hours generating the necessary income for the practice to keep going. So ideally, I'd like this to be without me, without my physical presence, but certainly with my administrative backing and my, and going sort of continuing the vision of expanding.
And how about like this journey into helping others build their practice? Is that kind of laying here too? Because I saw some of your reviews, and one of them had mentioned that you had helped them over a decade ago. And even though that this platform had been created and finished in 2022, like that, you've been helping people for a really long time. So do you see that in your future as well too?
100%. I would absolutely love to do this a little bit more consistently, full time if needed, or at least dedicate several days of the week to do that. It's really a pleasure. Just like when you work with a patient, you feel like you give yourself to the purpose of getting somebody better. Well, if I can help my fellow physicians, that would definitely be tremendously satisfying personal journey for me. So absolutely. This is something that I've looked into, and I'm hoping to do more full time and be more present for people in the future.
That's amazing. And do they have to be in any particular areas of the United States in order to bring value out of the platform?
Not at all. They can be anywhere in the United States. They don't have to be pain management doctors. They can be primary care physicians. They can even be physical therapists or dentists. It doesn't have to be necessarily an MD or a DO. It can be somebody in healthcare who is allowed to function independently and wants to sort of add themselves to the private practice world. I would be more than happy to help with that.
Awesome. So we can actually kind of tag team this and make this possible to not only, take you towards your goals of helping others in the next, 2 to 5 years do this, but we can help somebody out there who's listening now. And if you're listening now and you've even considered this, I mean, this is to me the step one, right? And it doesn't even have to be like this instance where you're going to go home and have that conversation that Mila and I were talking about, but it could be the first step to start the conversation, start these thoughts, and really push you as you start thinking about aligning yourself and your values with what you're doing and what you're trading your time for money. That's kind of like the conversation that this may start. And Mila, they can go on the website, buildyourmedicalpractice.com,
right, and
launch into this. And it's a relatively low cost to jump onto something like this. And the reason why I'm talking about this, I have no gain from any of this, just letting everybody know I'm excited to see entrepreneurs take the leap, because once I took the leap, I've never went back. Like I remember being asked I was with a design build construction company, and I had come out of school. I'd been with them for 3 or 4 years. And they asked me if I wanted to go on commission. I'm like, no, I don't want to go on commission. I'm good. You guys take care of me. I'm doing all right. But now looking back, is like I've lived my life off of commission by being a business owner.
Correct.
From then on, like I've never went back. So
you never can. You never can. You would have to drag me back to the hospital, kicking and screaming, and no money in the world.
Yeah.
I say it from the bottom of my heart. There is nothing that anybody can offer me that will that will allow me to come back. You running your own race, as I said, you running your own practice, you being your own boss is so valuable from every aspect of your life that all the obstacles that you need to overcome would be worth it.
Yeah. And full disclosure, it is not and will not be all sunshine and rainbows, as I like to say. There's going to be challenges. It's going to be stressful. I mean, let's get real, Mila. When you've got payroll and other people, you depends on who you are as a person. I'm sure you're like me and my wife in our journey was payroll's payroll. You never, ever, ever miss payroll, ever, no matter what. And
absolutely. You pay them before you pay you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a stress that may even keep some of the listeners from taking that jump. But even though it's not all sunshine and rainbows, just like what you said, I would never, ever go back. Like there's a switch that happens in us when we do this, that's like
100%. And also to your point, what we've mentioned before, right? When you think of like, okay, you have to meet the payroll, you have to pay this, you have to pay that. Well, it's an investment. You're making an investment. You're putting your money in stocks. You're kind of taking a little risk, right? You're putting your money in whatever. This is what it is. Yep. It's an investment. And yes, 1 month your stock is going to perform great, and next month is going to go down. But you never think about taking the money out, right? Because you're in for a long game. Well, this is a long run. You're in for a long run. So if you have a bad month or even bad 2 months, you can't let that distract you. Look at the big picture. Look at yourself a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years from now. And that's how you track your progress, not by worrying about small things, because they are, as big as they may look now, there are small things in retrospect.
And I will add to that, similar to the asset class of real estate, there's equity. And when you're building your business, you're building equity. You're building equity in the books, but think of the equity that you've built through the years, Mila, in Mila. Like what you're sharing here is equity, right? Yeah. And no matter what, even if something does go upside down, goes away, you lose all of your money, you lose everything. Guess what? Nobody will ever take away that equity that you put in yourself. So investing in yourself is something that nobody could ever take away from you.
100%. Just like when you go to med school and you're faced with these huge loans. I see so many people telling me, well, I can't go to med school. It's going to be very expensive. Well, take loans. You take loan when you buy a house. You take loans when you buy cars, whatever it is that you have to do. Well, this is the same thing. You're putting into yourself. And ultimately, life is too short, but also too long not to do this. Just do it.
Yes. So I think that's a great way to wind this up. And I want to push everybody back to that website again. And that's probably the best way to get in contact with you. Now, I know that we've got the social media, which the podcast is shared across all the social medias. You've got Unique Pain Medicine in Facebook and in Instagram as well, too. Right. Unique Pain Medicine, all one word. But the website we'll also share in the description here and when we put it on the socials. I want everybody to go there. If you're considering, or if you're currently running, maybe it's not operating the way that you thought it should be. Please go there and get connected with Mila. I think I'm so excited. We've got to stay in touch, because I want the listeners to listen to this and take action. And that's what I tell everybody in the real estate world is the best time to buy a house is now and 20 years ago. So when you look back in a week, 2 weeks, 2 years, I want somebody to have listened to this podcast, connected with Mila, and I want to stay in touch with Mila and see that change, that somebody creating their own future,
Agreed. Do it, run your own race, and reach out if you need help. That's all I can say.
That's awesome. Run your own race. And Mila, thank you for your time. I'm actually going to put this up on physicianwealthsystem.com. I'm going to put your platform in as a resource, and people can click on it there as well too and connect with you. Sure. Like I say, I'm so excited. Mila, thank you so much for your time. It's been a blast.
Thank you so much, Brett. Likewise.
Let's stay in touch, and I want to hear some stories about some lives that you've been able to encourage to shape and run their own race.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brett.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Real Estate Mogul MD. And again, check out that website. Connect with Mila. It is buildyourownmedicalpractice.com. Buildyourmedicalpractice.com. Remember, there's a UR inside of there. If you have any questions for us, send us an email at info@physicianwealthsystems.com. You can also find the link up on the resource platform on physicianwealthsystems.com, and take action. Get after it. Run your race. Let's stay in touch. Start your practice, and let's track it on the social media, huh? Everybody have a great day. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you, guys.